Ok, ok, ya estamos listos. Estamos esperando al amigo Ben a ver para hacer este vivo con el director de The Other Life. Ahí es medio tempranito, pero bueno, allá en Australia son las 9 en Perth. Hi everyone. ¿Cómo va? Hey, Gambiator, estamos acá, como decía, esperando a Ben, el director de The Other Life, para, bueno, hacer el vivo aquí. Vamos a hablar un poco de todo, de sus influencias, de algunos paralelismos que hay con otras películas, de de que hemos charlado también, digamos, alguna de literatura en la que se inspiró. ¿Qué hace Heisenberg? Ahí lo estamos esperando a Ben, que ya le dije a ver que entrara. Vamos a ver si, que va a ser, creo, no sé si es su primer vivo en Instagram, porque siempre, viste, la gente maneja Zoom y eso. Así que no sé si vieron la película Other Life, la australiana. Bueno, hay claramente distintas influencias. Gracias por estar acá, a Gaby Mator y Heisenberg, porque bueno, viste, acá son las 10 y de un domingo, viste, allá en Australia son las 9. Esta diferencia de horario con los australianos, así que vamos a ver si se puede unir. ¿Qué te iba a decir? Sí, sí. Pero bueno, para explorar otros directores, siempre es bueno. Y bueno, cuestión de hacer. Ah, ahí está, entró Ben. Eh, ahí va. Hi, Ben.
Hello,
Can
let
you
me
hear
spin
me?
my camera around to the right side.
Oh, great, great. Uh,
Okay.
well, welcome to the live here in Buenos Aires. It's like 10 a.m. Sunday, so people are sleeping. There's a lot of I told you a lot of the directors, but well, they will see the live. But well, now in there is 9 o'clock, so
Right. Well, it's Sunday night for me, so the batteries are running low, but I'll give you the last of my weekend energy.
oh, thank you very much. I sent you a mail with some horror films from Argentina. The sci-fi movies I
Yeah,
have to find it in with subtitles, and I also sent you the short story of Borges and Cortázar, that are the writers that well they took a lot of directors from sci-fi. They took the ideas from them. I don't know if you were able to read some of them.
I mean, look, I know those names because they're famous in literature. Have I read any of the stories? No, but now I'm kind of inspired to, so I think I'll have to catch up on it. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. There's a lot of material in there. All those videos look really cool. So yeah, there's a lot for me to get acquainted with.
No, yeah, you will see Borges and Cortázar, they will blow your mind. Actually,
Yeah,
there's a review by William Gibson. He was a fan of Borges, and he used the Borges
that's
story
right.
to build his literature, and it really blows your mind. And well, we talk about it with other directors, and also Brandon Braga, the producer of Star Trek, and there's a movie called Infinity Chamber by Travis Milloy, the writer of Pandorum, that actually it's kind of it has a similar thing to your movie. Have you watched that movie?
Yeah, what year was that? Was that like I can't remember. Is it
Um,
10 years? Would it be 10 years or more?
no, I don't think 5 years maybe.
Is that all?
Uh,
Hmm.
I will send it.
Well, yeah.
I will send it. We did a live with the actor Chris Kelly, and well, we are going to do that with Travis Milloy. But it's very interesting that all these movies, your movie, deals with the idea of in a way manipulate time in order to live experience. In a way, if I mean, in some way, it's a way of achieving uh, immortality, I think, because you can stretch time forever. But at the same time, there is the it looks like a punishment. That's where the ideas you work with when you wrote the script.
Yeah, believe it or not. So I got in touch when I was, first of all credit for the story has to go to Kelly Eskridge. She wrote a novel called Solitaire that she had to adapt her own work several times over as it went through different studios. And, so her original ideas really got churned through the mill, and very, very little of what she had to say ended up in the final film. That's just the process sometimes, especially when it was in front of me and we had to do, a low budget version of what was initially a much bigger film. We had to really focus in on one or two little ideas as opposed to the many, many big ideas that she initially was trying to explore. So in my rewrite, when I was trying to figure out what to focus on, I got in touch with a think tank in Oxford whose job it is to come up with alternatives to prison, different methods of incarceration, and they don't invent any of them or develop any of them. They just come up with concepts and then let other people worry about whether or not the technology exists. And they had some really wild ideas, life extension technology so that people could serve, 300-400-year sentences, chemical incarceration where you kind of, basically sent on a trip indefinitely. And then one of them, virtual incarceration was another one as well, where they toyed with the fact that time could be subjective and your experience of prison could be condensed into a shorter period of time. Now, that just sounds like torture to me. That's the most horrible thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty compelling idea.
Actually, I'm going to send you a short story that is in one Borges anthology. It's not a story from Borges, but it was discovered by him. It's called Worse Than Hell, and it's about a guy trapped in limbo, like in purgatory, and he is condemned to spend there eternity minus 1 day. And the waiting is so terrible that he preferred to go straight to hell.
Of course. Yeah. Did you see The Platform that was released on Netflix this year?
The Platform?
Yeah, The Platform. So that was a prison of about 300 layers, and every day a platform full of food just comes down.
The Spanish movie. Yeah.
That's right, yeah. A horrific concept. I love that film, though.
Yeah. Here the original title is El Hoyo, El Agujero, like because the hole, because there's a hole in the different layers. And I mean, the idea of someone trapped in solitary, I mean, because actually there's a lot of essays about the use of solitary in prison, because people, when you are trapped in a small room, you lose your mind, literally. I mean, time starts stretching. I mean, you can spend like 3 days, but for you, it's going to be 10 days. Actually, people go mad. And in the case of 1 year spending there, people, I mean, it's completely crazy. And if we're talking about 2 years, 10 years, it's madness. I mean, really, I mean, it's worse than hell, like the story. And in a way, is here the concept of immortality, because imagine to spend your whole life, living forever. You are not trapped, but in a way you are trapping in the same existence. That's something you wanted to show, like the idea that immortality is not an appealing option or idea.
Everything needs an end. And the malfunction in the simulation in Other Life is that there's no exit, that when it gets to the end, it resets to the beginning again. So you are trapped in a perpetual loop. And that was actually, lightly lifted from the novel as well, is this idea that we can be trapped by our own behavior, or that the error is not in the software, it's in us. That if we're dwelling on grief in particular, or any kind of wound in our past, that's inescapable. We have to learn how to kind of break the cycles of grief and mourning to be able to move forward again. That was a very sweet idea that I thought really lended itself really well to the concept, to the technology in the science fiction.
The idea of putting memories also it reminds me a lot to the Philip Dick stories, actually, because Philip Dick plays a lot with that idea. Is that one of your influences?
Of course, yeah. Absolutely, yeah. How could he not be?
Yeah, of course. Actually, Philip Dick also read Borges, and most of the Philip Dick stories are adaptation of Borges stories. But they go from fantasy to sci-fi, because the difference between sci-fi and fantasy is the explanation. One is the machine, and the other one is the magic, artifact. And it's kind of interesting.
I mean, the other thing that Philip K. Dick does a lot is he uses the science fiction, the technology, as analogous for drug addiction or psychological issues rather than the actual technology itself. And I think that I think that's always pretty compelling. There's a novel by Jeff Noon called Vert, which does the same thing, where the kind of shared virtual simulation that everyone is lost in is absolutely metaphor for heroin addiction, and it works beautifully. And I think certainly we talked a lot about the drug that is other life, the eyedropper.
Well, actually, the idea of that this reality it's created by a drug. Well, it's the analogy, and also the idea of being addicted to reality that is not, reality, fake reality, right? And because sometimes it's the idea that we want to escape, we don't want to face our problems, and that's the thing with the character, because she doesn't want to, face the situation of her brother. Well, but in the end, she decides to put an end to the situation.
Yeah.
That was in the novel, or was something you add?
No, that was manufactured for the film. Just quickly though, to go back one step, we're all addicted to technology. I mean, social media addiction is one of the most compelling issues we have right now. How many times we've been in a conversation and people are looking down at their phone? I mean, that's a cycle of addiction that is really hard to break. And I've caught myself doing it, especially this year with the isolation and the virus, and sort of, spending a lot more time away from other people. Well, who's your friend? Your friend is Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
Well, that's why. I usually prefer to socialize, and in quarantine, I met a lot of people from all over the world. Because I like to call, I like to make these kind of calls, also to send voice messages and call. I hate the idea of texting, and because I discovered in Latin America we love to chat, because we're very social. In the Anglo-Saxon world is kind of a different. I was talking to another sci-fi director from Australia, Jesse Bryan, and he told me that in Australia they don't use voice messages, and here it's very common to say voice messages. Yeah. So that's a different.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that.
Yeah. Well, I send you, as you know, you have fans here. A lot of people here watch Other Life. Actually, I send you a young writer a message. Did you hear the message of Florencia? I think
I did. That was very sweet. Thank you for sharing that. It's always nice to hear stuff like that. Of course, it is.
Oh, I am. Yes, and she asked you if you're going to do more films. Are you planning your next film? It's going to be sci-fi, horror.
I mean, always working on it. I'm actually working on a war film at the moment, so that's kind of front and center. But I've got a few things tucked away. I love science fiction, and actually, as the more time goes by, the more focused on it I want to be. I think, I sort of earned my stripes in film and TV, doing contemporary drama. but when you get to flex a little bit creatively, when you get to do something that's a little bit more fantastic, it's it's hard to let that go because it's just a lot more fun. You got more toys to play with, you know, when when you're making a science fiction or you know, a film that's just more creative, basically. It's yeah, and certainly like all my influences growing up, I was such a cyberpunk baby, just constantly consuming you know, anime and cyberpunk literature.
Mm. What were when you were a kid? What were your favorite shows?
See, I grew up weird. I didn't grow up in Australia. I grew up on a boat with my parents sailing around the world. So
Wow.
my influences were whatever was nearby at the time, and quite often that would mean, you know, like trying to watch TV in Italian, or it would mean, you know, like in fact I saw Return of the Jedi the first time in the cinema when I was a very little kid, dubbed in Italian, and I had to sit next to my parents with a phrase book flicking through trying to get the translation as it's happening on the screen. Um, so yeah, so pretty wide and broad influences. But I think the reason I was so into anime is because it had already been through a layer of translation. No matter what country you saw it in, whether it was in Spanish or French or English, it's already come away from the original Japanese, and there's always going to be something lost in the translation. So you just have to kind of watch the story visually and try and keep up. So yeah, I was anything with robots, I was into it.
Yeah. Actually, the thing I really appreciate the most about anime is the stories, the creativity
Mm,
they have. I mean,
mm,
I mean, for me, what's amazing to see all these cyberpunk,
mm.
stories in anime. Of course, Ghost in the Shell, Akira, but there were a lot. I mean, do you think that was an influence in order to become a, director?
Yeah, and you know, thing is, I don't think I realized just how much of an influence it was until the like recent years. Actually, you know, that was just kind of my diet of stuff as a young person. And then when you become an
Mm.
adult, you shift your influences to things that are a bit more contemporary, a little bit more sophisticated. But then you come out the other side of that. You get a little bit older again, and you're like, actually, I want to go back to the cartoons. But I just went and rewatched the 4K re-release of Akira at the cinema.
Yeah.
And even though I've seen that film probably 12, 15 times in my life, I've only ever seen the English dub. And seeing it at the cinema was the first time I saw it in the original Japanese with the subtitles. And it was a different movie. It was so much better. It was very exciting, very exciting. Different story, you know, like so much more nuance and so much more character in the vocalization. And it was just, I'm so glad I got to see it again for the first time.
What about literature? Did you have any influences while growing up?
Say that again, sorry?
The literature, do you have any, did you read any novels when you were young, sci-fi novels?
Yeah, like, like truthfully, like I was reading books that are a little bit too old for me. So obviously I read, you know, like as a little kid, I was reading, you know, like Famous Five and Hardy Boys and like detective stories and whatever. But I read Moby Dick and Treasure Island and, you know, I was reading like quite advanced science fiction novels, and I don't think I understood them because I was, you know, under 10 years old trying to read this stuff, and I was just into the spacey concepts without necessarily understanding the deeper meanings. It was a good
Mm.
education. Like I loved all those books, and but I've had to go back and reread them as an adult and sort of reacquaint myself, which has been great. It's actually kind of valuable to reread stuff and
Mm.
yeah, experience the story again.
Mm. By the way, I recommend you to see the movie Arrowhead. It's an Australian sci-fi movie
Mm,
by Jesse Ryan. If you want, I can put you in contact with him. He's in Australia. I don't know.
sure.
He's in, I think in Melbourne. It's actually it also plays with the idea of stretching time. Subjective time. I think Australian directors, sci-fi director, for some reason they have something with the time stretching thing. I don't know why. Maybe in Australia something. It's an island, so I don't know. But
Because
really,
it's a
I
big
think it
country and everything's a long way apart, so
yeah,
we feel very we
maybe,
feel very thinly spread and separated from the rest of the world. So everything has a time difference. We're always going 2 hours back, 1 hour forward.
yeah. It also plays the idea of immortality more as a punishment than as
Hmm.
a as something good. And I think that that's a very interesting thing because again, as you say before, immortality it's really a punishment. I mean, if you think about it. Because there's also there's a story. I will send you the story about this guy who is immortal, and people. I mean, humans evolve, and he remains as a living, obsolete, human being because he doesn't evolve. He's like home like like a caveman living among people, right? So again, it would be. I don't think it would be a practical thing. That's a thing you want to continue exploring, or you want to change to other thing if you have the chance.
No, I could go deep. Like I could dive deep into that stuff for sure. I um, am fascinated by time. I'm fascinated by our relationship to time and the meaning we place in what we have available to us. If we had a lot more, if we knew that we were going to live for centuries, would we do less with it? Maybe we would do less with it. I don't know, but I think that is such rich, fertile ground for modern day fairy tales, and I think it's really topical. I think as the world progresses technologically, as I think we sort of increasingly we see our spiritual roots as being sort of primitive. We're sort of stepping away from a lot of the things that gave us comfort, whether it's through religion or other forms of spirituality, and now we're pivoting to technology. And so people come up with theories like the simulation theory, like maybe we're living in a simulation or whatever. They come up with these ideas, which is just it's just reskinning the afterlife with computers instead of angels and demons. And so of course, we want to think that there's more to it, and we want to think that perhaps we can just live a little longer or experience a little bit more and develop a bigger understanding of this universe. How could you not want to make films about that? I mean, come on.
Yeah, actually, when I was talking to a producer from all over the world, not only Australia, the idea to start doing anthologies from different
Mm.
directors using story from different authors. I talked with people from Argentina, Russia, well, the United States, and maybe we can do something like using the same phenomena to tell different story. Would you be interested in something like that?
Yeah, of course. I think that's fascinating because, for all our similarities, there are like these little differences in all of us that means we're going to have very different points of view on really big ideas like immortality, and what a fantastic anthology that would be to get, cultural viewpoints
Yeah.
from around the world. Hey, you should check out a film called 2067. It's another Australian science fiction directed by a good friend of mine, Seth Lani. And it's a time
Oh,
travel film with a really big environmental message behind it. Definitely worth checking out for sure.
I will. I will. I will. I mean, if we can talk to him if he's available. I would
Yeah.
love to. So, I mean, because I mean, there's a lot. You have a lot of fans here. It's kind of interesting because directors
Hmm.
here are very known in other countries, but not here. And I think it works the other way around. I mean, it's kind of funny, right? Because really, really, a lot of people watch your movie. I mean, a lot of people tell, "Oh my God, the other life." Yes, of course.
Yeah. Wow.
That's why you should come to Latin America. I mean, because you start as a sailor, right? I mean, you
Hmm.
travel, so you have to keep traveling.
I agree. Yeah, like I said, I'm actually grateful for this opportunity to speak to you because it's drawn my focus to a whole new world of cinema that I possibly wouldn't have dug into otherwise. And I was looking back through like on IMDb, just trying to see like what Argentinian films have I seen. And I realized that like sometimes I don't know, like like it's just a Spanish language film, I don't necessarily know which part of the world it's from. I just sort of enjoy the film without thinking about it. Like a few years ago, there was that anthology, Wild Tales.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was an Argentinian film. I thought that was a Spanish film, and I love that movie, So I had to like really dig and go, what have I seen? And I realized I think the only other one I could find was from the '90s. It was called Mobius, about the train stuck in a loop.
Yes, it's a
Yeah,
great
yeah.
movie. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But aside from that, yeah, I've got a lot of catching up to do. Oh, wait, Motorcycle Diaries, of course. Everyone's seen that, but
Motorcycle.
yeah.
Yeah, Moebius was one of the first. Well, actually, sci-fi here has a very rich tradition in literature. In cinema, there
Mm.
are some things. I'm trying to get. There's a movie called The Sleepwalker. I'm trying to get it with subtitles. It's amazing movie. The same director is going to release a movie right now called Immortal. That
Ah, cool.
we did a live with Fernando Spinner, the director, and he also plays with Borges, Cortázar ideas. And in this movie, Immortal, I will send it. I will send you the trailer because it hasn't
Please.
been released yet, but it's on festivals. But it's about a parallel. They discover a parallel universe where the people that died in this one are still alive, so you can go and visit them. I mean, it's kind of a it sounds like a utopian thing, but it's not so that like that. I mean, Fernando is a great director. He's
I mean,
amazing. I mean,
I'm into it. I'm going to look it up. Like, about 5 years ago, I saw I'm always trying to catch up on like sci-fi shorts and things, doing the rounds on Vimeo or whatever. And there was a film called Uncanny Valley that was by an Argentinian director. Has that director done anything else? Because that film was spectacular. It was like a 10 or 5 minute
what
movie. It was called
what
Uncanny Valley, and it was about like addiction to VR, like all these people trapped in virtual reality, and they're all kind of strung out like drug addicts. It was
oh wow. I'll check it out. If I can I don't remember, but if I will watch it, and if you want, I can contact you with the director also. I mean, I'm a human LinkedIn. I connect people, and then things happen because I
good for
like to
you.
see like good stories,
Hmm.
come alive. I mean, because again, the idea of the anthology is something that nowadays can be done. It's
That's right.
easier. I know with the quarantine, so. But yeah, no, well, Wild Tales again. It's a great movie. We are going to try to do some in some moment with the director, Demian Cifroni. He's in in the United States working right now.
Of course.
And I'm going to ask you about a short film that I tried to watch. That's called Nix, I think,
Mm.
horror sci-fi, but I couldn't find it. It is available somewhere.
It's only on Hulu.
Oh,
And
oh, wow.
yeah, yeah. So Hulu. I don't know. It can be quite difficult to get on. I have a Hulu account, but I'm geo-blocked from it at the moment, so I can't watch it.
Yeah. No,
Yeah. So
no, no,
every
man. Mm.
every every year, Fox Digital do an anthology of short, like 2 minute horror films called Bite Size Horror. Um, And, usually it's like a little leg up for emerging filmmakers, but it's also a way just to kind of explore IP, like test an idea and see if it lands, maybe develop it into a feature. I think there was one called, was it Lights Out or some film like that, like some short that was really popular and got turned into a feature. So yeah, I did one of those last year. I shot it in London. And it's only 2 minutes, man. Like it's very hard to make a movie that short. Uh, and to make a horror movie that short, it's like setup and a scare and the end. That's all you get. Not a lot of development.
Would you explore horror as a genre? Because right now, well, also here in
Absolutely.
Argentina, what kind of horror do you like?
Yeah, so that was my first. I was a games designer in my 20s, and a lot of the stuff I was working on was, sci-fi or horror related. And the first script I wrote, my first step into filmmaking, was a zombie film that I wrote.
Oh,
Yeah. And I look, zombies never go out of style. I still feel like
yeah.
there's one in me. There's one in me somewhere. I don't know what it looks like yet, but it's like fertile ground, and yet you've got to be very, very creative to come up with a fresh take on quite a tired idea.
Awesome. Yeah.
Um,
Now, uh, yeah, well, I think the challenge is to find now an original idea for zombies because they have caught on in the last 10 years. So I have seen a lot of movies, a lot of variations, but you can always find a new standpoint
yeah,
in order to explore the idea. Because originally the zombie idea it's a very existential genre. I mean, it starts, of course, with Romero. But I think the origin of the concept of the idea comes from the past,
hmm
the Camus novel about the past and how people act in that situation. Because zombies are not the issue, clearly. The clear is what people do in that situation. I think that's the interesting and existential thing. I
But
mean, the idea that
every
we are going to.
every single culture around the world has a zombie myth, and they're different in every whether they're like mindless or ravenous or whatever. Like every culture has their own take on the idea of life after death, and people basically been turned into savages, and the fear of being absorbed into that. Like vampires and zombies have the same mythological root. It's only cinema that has split them into like the dumb blue collar one and the sophisticated kind of elite, which are the vampires. That's a cinematic convention. But I think yeah, like I'd love to find like some original cultural angle on the undead myth. Because I don't know that we're in the mood for a virus right now. I don't think we should do any more virus outbreaks.
Actually, I sent you one of the movies I sent you. It's an Argentinian movie called The Ones That Return. That's a Laura Casabe movie, a director from here. We did a live 2 weeks ago. It's an amazing new take on the zombie genre because they are not really zombie. They play with a legend of of the tribes that used to live here in Argentina. And it happens 100 years ago in the times of the colonization. It's so well done, and again, it's not zombies really. I mean, it's something people say, oh, it's a zombie movie, but it's not. They return from that, but that's not the same because of the a goddess
Yeah,
of a place. And I found that take on the genre excellent. You should watch it.
yeah.
I send you the with subtitles.
Great. Yeah, I'm into it. Look, zombie is just a word, and it's a farcical word. Like I think it sometimes it carries the wrong connotation. But like I said, the deeper myth underneath it, there's a lot to explore there, and we have barely scratched the surface of what can be done in that space. I think just when you think it's exhausted, someone reinvents it, and it'd be great to have a stab at that one day, I think.
I'm also when I explore horror, I also like to when especially authors explore new ideas. I mean,
Mm,
they explore new monsters. Like that's why I love Clive Barker. We did a live with
mm.
Brandon Braga, who directs the adaptation of Clive Barker. We hope we will do one with Clive. And also, I love Junji Ito. I don't know if you know it. It's a mangaka from
Yeah,
Japan.
yeah.
He's amazing, and the ideas that he come up with are incredible. I wish I could come up with an idea like that. I mean, have you thought about exploring like new monsters or horrific
Oh, for
horror
sure.
ideas?
Yeah, for sure. Existential horror is like cosmic horror is that's I don't know where to begin. In fact, Nick's this 2-minute tiny thing I did was based on a Lovecraft story. Um,
Oh, well.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, again, you don't get to do much in 2 minutes, but the Lovecraft story, set obviously in the late 20s, early 30s, two men exploring a cave. One of them goes deep into the cave, and they communicate via a wire. And it's all told from the point of view of the guy up top. And he slowly starts to understand that he's no longer talking to the same person, and that something else is coming back up out of the hole. So I just took that idea and I turned it into a spacewalk. So you got an astronaut in a capsule talking to someone outside, and then eventually figures out, oh, it's something else, and don't let it in the airlock,
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would love to dive into that. I'd love to do a feature, I mean, I think Alien might be my favorite movie of all time. It's a horror movie in space. How could you ask for more than that? I mean, whatever it is, 30 years later, I'm still getting nightmares from that film. 40. How old is that film? My God. I think it might be 40 years old, yeah.
Well, there's a big tradition in the space horror movies, like the sci-fi horror. I mean, most of them, they're Lovecraftian horror. If you think of Alien, or also, the Event Horizon. Pandorum again. Has
Love that film.
Lovecraftian elements. It's really, I mean, really. Well, I hope you can chat with Travis, who wrote Pandorum. Actually, apparently he's writing a novel, the second part. We hope to have that soon. And have you thought of writing short stories or novel, before doing your next movie? Because a lot of script writers are doing that right now, also directors.
Yeah, it's what I used to do. All my old notebooks and ideas sort of stretch back to when I was a teenager. In fact, you mentioned before that story about a man stuck in purgatory. That was one of the first short stories I ever wrote. Was a guy who was wandering around a frozen desert, and not knowing how he got there, and eventually discovered that was his personal hell. So that's the kind of stuff I was writing when I was 14. Yeah. There's a lot of crazy stuff from back there that I should probably start digging into again. I wrote another story, which was I wrote the journal of an astronaut that was exploring habitable planets, and so he was alone on a planet deciding whether or not humans could live here. And it was just his journal slowly going mad from the isolation.
So again, the idea of isolation and, eternity. You should explore that, really, really. But really, it's a very existential. I mean, and again, you can maybe find a zombie. You can do a zombie movie that use that idea. Because again, because again, the zombie, in fact, it's they are in a state of eternal, deterioration. Again, right? And again, it plays with the idea of an immortality, but as in a very disturbed way. As this, but again, imagine if you are immortal. I mean, if you are immortal for million years, humans will evolve, and you will remain as a human fossil. So that's nightmarish, I think.
And I mean, a zombie represents loss of identity, loss of self. You're literally being absorbed into a faceless mass, where technically you're undead, right? So you live forever, but the curse is at the cost of yourself. That's existential horror right there. That's dreadful.
Yeah, because I mean, the other in the last lives we talked about the idea that real horror is not about jump scares; it's about disturbing ideas. And when we talk about disturbing ideas, we are talking about things that really scares you. And of course, the existential horror has that: the fear of death, the fear of losing your mind, the fear of getting old. I mean, deterioration. I mean, that's our disturbing ideas and the loss of
Absolutely.
identity. That's why I love George Romero, because George Romero, and also I like horror because it's a vessel to tell to communicate very interesting ideas using like a fantastic story.
You know, like some of the
Um,
original body horror films, like The Fly or Tetsuo Iron Man. Incredible, very similar idea, just the loss of self as you devolve into something other, is the source of horror, the source of dread. Yeah, we don't make them like that anymore.
Eh? Yes, but we can do it. I mean, we should do it. I mean,
Of
because
course.
again, I mean, especially now that we live. I mean, I think social media and what it's doing is creating, like in a Brave New World, Aldous Huxley book. Social media is it's acting like this drug that distract us from all
Hmm.
these terrible things that we're going to die because we are all the time distracted. We are all the time thinking that we're going to live forever, and the truth is we're going to die. We are obsessed with immortality. That actually is a terrible idea, as you show it in your movie. But at the same time, I mean, we try to avoid thinking of in our own mortality. So, well, we have
The
a
most profound way it was put to me was when I heard someone say that the worst thing about addiction to like social media in particular is that we are no longer allowing ourselves to be bored. And part of what makes time precious is that sometimes you will sit and have nothing to do, and that's when you dream, and that's when ideas come to you, and that's when you become motivated to create perhaps, or to change in some way. But if you're forever going, check the notifications, all right, post something, and at no point, you're just constantly chasing that little dopamine hit. At no point are you allowing yourselves to have a lull, to feel. um, and I think that is a dreadful thought. And I think about it every
well,
time I pick up my phone.
well, that's a great idea for a movie. I mean, there you have it. No, no, seriously. You should explore that and do a movie about that, or at least start with a short film.
Do you remember Equilibrium? Was it before The
Yeah,
Matrix or after The Matrix? Yeah, Christian Bale.
2002 after,
After The
or I don't
Matrix,
know.
yeah, yeah. So it was kind of inspired by what the clothing and the gun fu and all that stuff. But the root idea of that was that everyone had to take a pill that prevented them from having emotions, so they would
Yeah,
conform. And that's a little bit like George Lucas's second film, THX.
yeah.
Same thing. Everyone's just in this inert state constantly. Um, I mean, there's reflections of that right now, I think. And one of the things I think about a little bit too much is that, the cyberpunk I grew up on described this dystopian future where corporations controlled all the wealth and power, and where their humanity is eroded by the technology they use. And you would read these things as a young person and go, oh, God, what a horrible, dark future that I hope I never have to live in. But man, all that stuff has come true. It's not science fiction
Mm.
anymore. All the things I just said are happening. Maybe we don't have robotic hands yet, but that'll come. It's in a different form. It's the phone in our pocket is that technology.
Well, actually, in a conference, William Gibson said we are living in the future, like, because he
Mm,
wrote Neuromancer, I think, in the '84, and now everything that he predicts became true, became, the living reality. We are,
absolutely.
experimenting. So again, and that's why I love sci-fi because again, it reflects our fears. I mean, it helps us to, and again, when you project your fears, and again, you find ways to avoid it. That's why creativity and writers and storytellers are really very important because Brave New World, it wasn't just a novel, it's a warning. And the loss of creativity, the scenario you described before, it's really terrible because it will allow to nightmares become truth. There you have another idea you can use.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it means we're supplementing our own imagination with the information we're fed.
Mm.
Again, just a dreadful thought. And there's that loss of identity that we've been talking about, isn't it? Like,
Actually, there's an author I'm sure you read about. It's Stanislaw Lem, the writer of Solaris. I don't know
mm,
if you read. Oh, he's so great because he's kind of ironic. He's not like nightmarish like Philip Dick, and he's all the time like. And there's a short story playing with the idea of what would happen if they create a machine and artificial intelligence that can create art like humans. And it's the best art ever. So it's like the end of art because nowadays artists cannot create, they cannot match. And they try to disconnect her, and the IA generates a poem that it's so meaningful that people start crying that they cannot disconnect it. So finally they send that to the space. I mean, and I found that story so yeah, I mean,
it's
so
amazing.
great. Yeah, I mean, because again, I mean, we are living in the age of the era of algorithms and AI, and I mean, my deepest fear right now, in the short term, is what happens when an IA can write a story so deeply, so meaningful, like Borges, for example. I mean, that would be a really shitty world to live in.
Yeah, and part of me thinks it's inevitable too. I mean, every time we say there are certain benchmarks that AI will never cross, it crosses it. It won chess decades ago, and only a few years ago it could win at Go, a game which, even the best players, they watched the machine play it and went, the human could never make those moves. Um,
Mm.
so it's not much of a stretch of the imagination to think that, give it however many years, somewhere between 0 and 100, perhaps, and exactly what you described will start happening. The question isn't like what happens when machines can do that. The question is what happens to us, and what do our lives look like, and what do we turn into? Um, I don't know. I've got no idea. And I don't think anyone could ever. I mean, there's lots of futurists that like to speculate, but we won't know until we're looking back on it.
Mm. I think we will remain to being human and to be slave to our passions. I mean, and we will have the need to socialize. It doesn't matter how
Mm.
technological the future comes. It's something we will do, and actually, and also the loss of social skills will be a problem if we still, like connected all the time to the social media. Actually, in your first movie, I watched it the other day, Wasted to the Young.
That's it.
In the end, there's kind of a social media reference when they probably have to decide who died, which of the characters died, and that was on your mind when you wrote that the script.
Yeah, so we shot that film in 2009, which was only a few months, like the iPhone was 2008, wasn't it? So it was like most people, yeah, smartphones existed, but it was still cutting edge technology when we shot the film. We had no idea how prescient it would be that, the year after we shot it, that it came out. People were really, people who watched the film were really talking about exactly that side of it. And I suppose I've always been a little bit horrified or fascinated by, how we leverage technology in social situations. And I got asked a lot of questions, when I did the press and the Q&As for that film. And I got invited onto panels to talk about bullying in high school, like I'm an expert on the subject. And and a lot of people would talk about, what does this technology mean to kids and how they interact. And the point I would make over and over is the same, which is that the interactions do not change. The tools we use change. There's always going to be bullies. There's always going to be victims. There's always going to be inequality, imbalance. We strive to measure those things out, and we strive to beat them and change them if we can. But they're always going to exist in some form or another. Having a smartphone versus, having carrier pigeons, having, etching into stone tablets, whatever the technology is you use to communicate, shouting with your voice. The interaction, the energy exchanging between people is always going to exist, right?
Yeah, actually, it was Machiavelli who said that technology evolves, but human passions rest the same. I mean,
Right.
they stay the same.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that's a truth. I mean, in a way. And well, again, sci-fi, it's a genre to explore the possibilities, and that's what I love about it. And that's what I always discovering and new authors. That's what always I'm doing. This exchange. That actually there's a lot of authors here in Latin America. If we have the chance in the future to organize some kind of meeting or congress here, would you come to Argentina to participate between different artists like that work sci-fi and horror?
Of course, undoubtedly.
You have a friend living here, you told me. So
That's right. Yeah. I don't know how long it's been since he's been back, but I have a friend who spends half his year every year, except for this year, in Buenos Aires. So yeah, it's a room to sleep in that I've never taken advantage of. So yeah, I have a lot of catching up to do. It's a part of the world I've never been to.
And do you speak Spanish, right? I mean, because you travel.
No. I tried learning Italian when I was little, but none of it stuck. When I was 8 years old, we spent a little bit of time in Italy. I had Italian friends, and my mum told me I was running around talking Italian with all the kids. So I had this idea that it must be subconsciously locked in my brain, and all I have to do is go there, and I'll just start talking. So yeah, a few years ago, I went back there and I thought, this is going to be great. I'm going to just step out the door of the airport, get in the taxi, and I'm going to start talking Italian. I sat in the back seat of that car and I was like, you speak English? Didn't come.
I always ask this question of all the directors, writers I talk to in these lives. How do you want to be remembered?
Oh, that's a hard question. That's a really hard question. Look, I just want to be remembered, personally, I just want to be remembered as being decent. I think it matters that you should always leave things better than you find them. And that's what I hope, is that I will be remembered gratefully, that things were better as a result of having been around it all. That would be as much as I could ask for.
Yeah, well, that's a way of achieving immortality in a way. Actually, Borges used to say that we died two times. The first one when we die organically, and the second one is when we are forgotten. So, in a way,
absolutely,
you can really achieve immortality.
Yeah. You don't get to make a lot of movies in your lifetime, so you have to think really carefully about the ones you do get to make.
Yeah, actually, if you can do one meaningful movie, maybe people will remember. I mean, that's let's see, like Shakespeare. I mean, people still talk about Shakespeare, Chaplin. There's a movie actually where we're talking about immortality and the curse of immortality that takes this to comedy. It's called Death Become Her with Bruce Willis, Meryl Streep, Zemeckis. What I love about that movie is how it jokes with this idea of people obsessed with immortality, but it comes at a price. And the price.
Now, wasn't that an English remake of a Spanish language film? Isn't there an original film that was? Am I imagining that? I thought there was a.
Could be. There's a lot of remakes.
Yeah. I mean, it's an older film. It's back in the 90s, but I think even then, I think it was a remake. Yeah, I remember it well. Yeah, of course. And also, it was a kind of breakthrough special effects film for the time. Yeah.
With the holes. Yeah,
that's right.
I really love that movie because of that. Yeah, actually, there's a lot of remake. There's a lot of movies that people don't know there's a remake or they are based, inspired, or directly stole from another movie. You know the movie K-Pax?
Don't tell me. Don't tell me. Man facing southeast, man facing.
Very,
Yeah,
very good. Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Have you watched it?
I know the film. I don't think I've seen it. It's like it's quite old, right? Like 90s or 80s even. Yeah,
I will try to get to you. It's way, way better than K-Pax. I mean, really, it's
yeah,
amazing.
right.
Subiela, the director, you should see his movies. It's like a genius. I mean, really. I mean, he every one of his movies, it's incredible. I really will try to get you
Yeah,
the version with
I want to see
subtitles.
it because I quite liked K-Pax. Like it didn't stay with me forever. I thought it was all right. You know, I liked the idea a lot, and I did know that it was a remake or rather a ripoff. I don't know which one you call it,
No,
but
no,
yeah,
actually,
cool. I want to see that.
it was a ripoff because there was a lawsuit, and I think
No, really.
yeah,
You know what? That's how I know about the film because I think I read about that.
yeah. No, yeah, actually, I mean, but the Subiela film explore very existential because in a way it's based on a story. It's based on the idea of Adolfo Bioy Casares, that is an Argentinian writer, a friend of Borges, and also it takes some short story from Philip Dick, and he combined
Hmm.
them, but in a beautiful way because when you see Subiela, it's how do you describe the films of Subiela? It's like you are seeing poetry in images. That's what he
Yeah,
does with the dialogues, with the images. Well, you will see. Don't worry. I will try to find it with
it's like
subtitles.
watching Tarkovsky. Like
Yeah.
you're watching
Yes.
poetry in motion. Yeah.
That's it. And I wanted to ask you about Tarkovsky. Do you like him? Do you like his work? Do you think you took some of influence of him?
Look, it's like any of the greats, you know, it's like Kubrick. Of
Mm.
course, I've taken so much from those kinds of filmmakers. How can we not? Because when you watch anything that they've committed to film, you are aware of just a deeper level of understanding of the art and an integrity that very few people possess. So yeah, of course,
Mm.
it would be there'd be too much ego for me to say, oh yeah, I'm influenced by Tarkovsky. You know, everybody is. That doesn't make me special.
No, no, because really, it's as you said, it's so the images are so powerful. I mean,
Yeah,
it's like watching a painting, literally. I mean, it's
the carrying the candle into the wind is possibly one of the most iconic shots in cinema, and I think about it almost every week. That scene replays in my head. My whole life, that scene's been playing in my head. You know, it is such a profoundly beautiful, simple thing. Um, very, very few things stick with you like that.
Mm. And why do you think is that?
I don't know. It's a raw emotional. Like it doesn't have to have a reason. You know, there's lots of other things that I love that I could sit down and I could like intellectually disassemble, but not that. You know, like there's just certain other things like that shot where it just makes me glad to have seen it.
Mm.
That's all. That's all.
Well, you really you will enjoy Subiela's work because
Great.
he's kind of that way, and it's the idea that it's they're very surreal. I mean, yeah, you can think that Men Look into the to the Southwest, it's a sci-fi movie, but he always because of course because he's Argentinian, he's more influenced by this Cortázar, Borges, Adolfo Casares. Then it's not so like technological sci-fi, more
Hmm.
like the idea, the limits with its fantasy and sci-fi, they are kind of blurred. Because for example, the movie I told you about of Fernando Spinner, the Sleepwalker, plays with the idea that dreams are like windows to parallel universe. You know, this idea that you can find it in Borger's short story, the one I sent you, the circular ruins, that, well, Christopher Nolan took that story and another one to create Inception. I think that that's the beauty of that.
There's a similarity in Vert, the novel I mentioned before, where they never really explain the technology, just that the ability to share dreams exists. And it's left to the reader to decide how that works, and whether or not it's through a computer or just that's how life works in this story, and that's all you need to know. Yeah, I find that quite compelling, because sometimes when stories really knuckle down on, you know, how the machine works, I start to, who cares? It's just about how the people relate to it, right?
Yeah, well, that's one of the. Well, I was reading this essay of Borges that said the problem with science fiction, and that's why he always wrote these fantasy stories, because the problem is explanation. People they believe more the magic artifact than the machine as explanation. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I really like a science fiction author, Dan Simmons. He's written Hyperion, Ilium, I think was another one of his. And then there was a sequel to Hyperion called Endymion. And it's very much the same idea that, like, the technology is so advanced that it has become magical. And honestly, I mean, most of the technology I have around me right now is magic to me. So, you know, that sort of makes sense. But one of the concepts that Dan Simmons had in Hyperion was that in the future, AI is so advanced that it can basically predict the future with almost certain accuracy. But they don't feel the need to share that with us because they're beyond us. They're essentially gods, and there is a thing called the All Thing, which is from Norse mythology, is the source of knowledge and wisdom, and it was a council of AIs that people could go to and ask for prophecy. So in Dan Simmons' universe, technology had just become the new mythology, become the new pantheon of gods. And the new source of magic, and I think that's just awesome. I think that's beautiful because it's a better way to explore the boundaries of technology.
Yeah, actually, there's an anthology by Harlan Ellison that collect different sci-fi short story from different authors. And the first short story of the anthology, I don't remember the name of the author. It's a story about a being that is being chased by some of other, characters, this race of people that controls the universe, and they are so powerful, they have become so powerful that they control everything, and this character is running away from them, and he finally hired in the home land of this being, this race, and finally they get to him, and when he's going to be, trapped, catched by this, race, he says, "Please stop! I'm God." And the beings, they say, "We are mankind." So.
Well, I mean, have you read 2001?
Yeah, of course.
Because that's the big ending, is that they just end up in a zoo, kept by some mysterious race of immortals, gods, aliens, whatever, for their amusement. Which is nowhere near as profound as some of the other theories that came out from the film, which has a much more open-ended ending. Because the film, you could interpret that as an afterlife or any sort of other timeless dimension. But no, just a zoo for aliens.
No, actually, I read the novel first, and then I watched the movie. And of course, I understood the ending in a way. But I kept the idea of when your mind evolves in such a way, yeah, I mean, you become so powerful, but at the same time, you just start not caring about, like things that happen. Your worries change. Your how you say, you
Absolutely.
start worrying about different things. So
Yeah.
I remember this idea of Einstein said that when you evolve consciously, I mean, you can solve problems because you find new ways of seeing the problem, different ways, wider ways.
That's the dilemma of Dr. Manhattan in The Watchmen, is he
Yeah,
becomes this
yeah.
immortal, timeless, ultimate being who's, infinitely powerful and wise, and cannot relate to people anymore, so chooses to be alone. I mean, it's a tragic story. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, but a fascinating one.
So well, Ben, well, we end up here to complete an hour, so because and thank you very much for this opportunity. No, yes, because in Instagram they cut you if you pass an hour.
Ah, right. Yeah, I
Um,
didn't know that.
so thank you very much for this wonderful conversation. Well, I will try to introduce you a lot of director writers, and I hope we can do something. I mean, like anthology. I
Yeah,
will work on it. And when you come to Argentina, you are welcome to stay here. You have the well,
yeah.
you have many places. You have no excuse. You have to come to Buenos Aires.
Well, look, the world needs more people like you. I think what you're doing is fantastic, and no harm can come. Only good things can come from joining people and having conversations like this. And yeah, so who knows? Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for the opportunity to have a chat.
See you. Bye, people. I hope you have enjoyed the conversation. Bye bye.
All right, take care. Thank you, everybody. Bye bye.